I stopped because the tomatoes were good. That's all it was. I wasn't planning to stop at Fenwick Market. I was cutting through the way you cut through a market when it's between you and somewhere else. Head down, not shopping, but the tomatoes at the third stall were the kind you don't see anymore, the uneven, ugly ones that actually taste like something, and I stopped and I picked one up, and that's when I saw it. I want to be precise about this, because I've been imprecise about it in my own head for 3 weeks, and the imprecision is making things worse. So, it was standing at the stall across from the tomatoes, the one that sells kitchen equipment, good knives, heavy pans, the kind of stall that always has a small crowd of serious people, holding things and testing the weight. It was standing at the edge of that crowd, looking at a colander, not holding it. Just looking at it the way you look at something you're considering, head slightly forward. One hand raised, not quite touching. I noticed it the way you notice something at the edge of your vision that doesn't fit. My eyes moved to it, and then moved away, and then came back, which is what eyes do when the first look hasn't resolved into sense. The second look is when I understood something was wrong. It was dressed ordinarily. Dark jacket, dark trousers, shoes that had been resoled once, the kind of clothes that have no particular decade that you'd see in any photograph from the last 40 years, and not be able to date. Standing ordinarily, weight on one foot, the other slightly back, the posture of someone pausing in the middle of an errand. But the torso was wrong. I don't mean dramatically wrong. I don't mean the kind of wrong that makes people stop and stare. I mean the kind of wrong that you register, and then your brain immediately tries to correct for, because brains do that. Brains prefer sense to accuracy, and will sand down what they see until it fits into a category. My brain tried to tell me it was the jacket. My brain tried to tell me it was the angle, the way I was looking, the light in the market, which is always slightly strange, the old bulbs they've never replaced with anything modern. But the distance between its shoulders and its hips was wrong. Not grotesque, not a medical condition, not something you'd photograph and send to someone. Just that distance was longer than that distance should be. The body from shoulder to hip was the body of something that was not built on the same proportions as the people standing around it, and the people standing around it were close enough that I could compare. I put down the tomato. I watched it for I don't know how long. Long enough that the woman running the tomato stall asked me twice if I needed help, and I didn't answer her, which I feel bad about. She was kind about it, she said. Take your time, which is something people say and don't mean, but she seemed to mean it. The crowd at the knife stall shifted. Someone bought something and moved away, and the space the creature was standing in became less crowded, and I could see it more clearly, and it was looking at the colander with genuine interest. That's the only word I have for what I saw in its posture. Interest. The particular physical quality of a person considering a purchase, weighing the usefulness of something against the cost of carrying it home. It reached out and picked up the colander, turned it over, looked at the holes. The way you look at the holes in a colander when you're thinking about what you'll drain in it, whether the holes are the right size, whether it will sit properly in the sink. I want to be careful here, because this is the part that the two people I've told this to, find least believable. Not the wrong proportions, not the not quite rightness of the thing standing in a market. The part they find least believable is what I'm about to describe, which is that watching it hold the colander was the most frightening thing I have ever experienced in my life. Not because it was threatening, not because it looked at me, not because anything about the encounter suggested danger, because the colander was real. The market was real. The woman at the tomato stall who told me to take my time was real. And this thing that had been made, I understood in that moment, with a clarity I haven't been able to shake, that it had been made, that it was not born, that something about this place had over many years and many accumulated griefs produced this. This thing was holding a colander in a market on a Tuesday and considering whether to buy it, and the considering was genuine. Fenwick Market has been here since 1958. Most people who shop here regularly know the history without knowing they know it. It's in the layout, in which stalls are permanent and which rotate. In the way the older vendors talk about the southwest corner, which has had worse luck than the other corners. And everyone knows it, and nobody says why. The gas main ruptured in March 1987. 11 people died. 3 of them were at the knife stall, which was in a different location then, but has migrated over the years to more or less where it is now. The way stalls in old markets migrate around fixed points like water moving around stones. The market was closed for 6 weeks. When it reopened, people came back. Of course they came back. Where else would they go? The market was there, and the city was there, and grief does not change the utility of a good knife stall or a tomato vendor who sources the ugly ones. People had been bringing their grief to this market for 37 years. Grief and everything else. Joy, boredom, hunger, the specific pleasure of a transaction that goes well, the frustration of one that doesn't. But grief first, grief underneath, grief is the foundation of the place's emotional sediment. I did not know any of this when I stopped for the tomatoes. I know it now because I have spent 3 weeks learning everything about this market, and I still cannot explain precisely what I saw. I can only explain what I think the conditions were for something like it to exist. Something made from long enough grief in a specific enough place will eventually want a colander. I don't know what that means. I've been trying to figure out what that means. The best I've come to is this. It was made from human feeling, and human feeling includes the ordinary, includes the Tuesday errand, includes the consideration of kitchen equipment and the weighing of cost against usefulness. It was made from the whole of what people brought to that market over 37 years, and the whole of what people bring to a market includes everything. The mundane, as much as the devastating, the colander, as much as the grief. It put the colander down. Didn't buy it. The way you put something down when you've decided it's not quite right when you'll keep looking. It moved to the next stall, the one with the ceramics, and it stood there, in the same posture, weight on one foot, the other slightly back, and looked at a bowl. I watched it for another 20 minutes, then I bought the tomatoes and left. I don't know what I expected to feel on the way home. What I felt was something I don't have a clean word for. Not fear by then. Something more like the feeling you get when you understand that the world has been larger than you thought it was, and that the largeness is not malevolent, and that the largeness has been there the whole time, carrying its own concerns, considering its own purchases, moving through the same spaces you move through on its own Tuesday errands. The tomatoes were good. I ate them that evening with salt and olive oil and bread, standing at my kitchen counter, the way you eat something when you want to actually taste it. They were the best tomatoes I'd had in years. I've been back to Fenwick Market twice since then. I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't know what I'll do if I find it. Both times I stopped at the tomato stall. Both times I looked at the knife stall. Both times ordinary people. Ordinary Tuesday. Ordinary hours. The third time I go back, I'm going to stay until the market closes. I don't know why I think the closing time matters. It just seems like the kind of thing that might